This one comes from the heart. As many of you know, I'm from Burbank, California. My formative years were spent here. For many of us who grew up in the city, the local culture, for better or worse, shaped who we are. I mostly hung out with skaters, nerds, and most importantly, artists and musicians. Through thick and thin, one thing that I can say for sure, my childhood was never boring. I'm privileged to have had experiences that many people never get, and one of the places I want to honor in this video is a little known record store I frequented, Backside Records. Before we begin, a little disclaimer. I'm not telling the definitive version of the story. I'm relying on online sources, archived material, and my personal experiences as someone who spent time at this venue. I am not an expert historian, so if I get something wrong, please comment respectfully. This video is not sponsored by Backside Records or its staff. I'm making it simply because this place meant a lot to me, and I want to keep its memory alive. I hope you enjoy it, and I promise I'm taking this project seriously. It isn't publicly known when Backside Records first opened its doors, but a safe guess would be somewhere in the mid-1990s. The store was located in the heart of San Fernando Road, a major artery in Los Angeles geography that connected multiple communities together. So in those early years, Backside Records wasn't just selling music, it was testing the waters as a venue. In 2007, Jojo told me that Zero played Backside Records in the 1990s before they were Linkin Park, long before stadium tours or platinum albums. At the same time, Jojo told me that Apex Theory, which included the original System of a Down drummer, Ontronic Andy Kochinian, also played the shop. That small connection meant Backside was already part of the web of musicians who would come to define Los Angeles' alternative scene. These shows weren't just local noise, they were the first sparks of something bigger, a place where emerging sounds could take root before the world noticed. The store was run by Jojo Baghdassarian, a man who knew exactly how to make the space feel alive. Backside was a crossroads for punk, skaters, hip-hop fans, and anyone who didn't fit neatly into the mainstream. Flyers for shows littered the walls, shelves of vast with CDs and records that you couldn't find at Tower or Best Buy. So hanging out at Backside Records was as important as buying anything. It was a pulse in the valley's cultural bloodstream. By the time I discovered it, Backside had already survived those early formative years. I first stumbled upon Backside Records in 2006, wandering through the mall area with my friends who swore that this was the best shop for records. Stepping inside felt like entering a completely different world, with the atmosphere radiating energy that made the underground scene buzz. I remember flipping through some albums like Minor Threat, Against All Authority, Agent Orange, Bad Brains, Choking Victim, The Aquabats, Papa Gandhi, and this one CD that's marked really cheap called The Misguided. What do they sound like?
Shut up and take my money!
Aw, hell yeah, that killer guitar riff. Let's go. And then in June of 2011, I saw Touche Amore perform in Backside Records. That day, the store was packed with sweaty punk fans, the kind of crowd where bodies collide and push like ocean waves. If the mosh pit were the Pacific, I'd be somewhere deep in the Mariana Trench, flailing and swept along with everyone else. And watching the video with the benefit of hindsight, I swear I'm in there somewhere, lost in the tidal wave of fans screaming Touche Amore lyrics. That moment wasn't just a show, it was a living, breathing organism that we call a community. Even then though, its future was shifting. By the early 2010s, the shelves that once had a vast catalog of vinyls and CDs nearly completely wiped clean, almost replaced entirely with streetwear. You see, Backside Records had kinda undergone a full MTVization, a transformation from a cultural hub into a commercialized space, trying to keep up with the other stores in the San Fernando Road area, hawking overpriced items that nobody wanted, like $50,000 purses. The music wasn't exactly gone, but it was buried under layers and layers of clothing. The records were no longer the heart of the store. Jojo even tried to sell me some of the new merchandise, but his voice carried a nervous hesitation, as if he too felt this exact disconnect deep within his soul. What had once been a gathering place where punk skaters and misfits hung out was now a space that sold style over culture.
Oh my god.
And the energy of community has been suffocated under the fluorescent lights and display racks. In Los Angeles, gentrification doesn't just appear as rising rents, it manifests as a gradual disappearance of spaces that once gave the city its rhythm. The California Institute of Abnormal Arts, Bridgetown DIY, and the Cobalt Cafe all collapsed under different pressures, financial strains, burnout, and pandemic shutdowns. But when this happens, Los Angeles' underground cultural ecosystem shrinks. Gentrification doesn't just happen all at once. It comes in waves, and every wave hits the working class communities harder than the last. Wealthier people move in. Real estate speculators see an opportunity and property values start to climb. But when rent prices skyrocket, long-time tenants, usually working class families, immigrants, and communities of color, get priced out of their own neighborhoods, it pushes many into homelessness. Then there are the so-called anti-poverty or anti-nuisance laws, bans on resting in public, camping bans, and food sharing restrictions.
Nonprofit Food Not Bombs Fort Wayne is calling out the city's police department for using their weekly meal to serve arrest warrants.
It is a deterrent to people who don't want to interact with the police to come get food and get fed.
A Food Not Bombs Facebook post made on Tuesday explains that twice now, police have waited until a person with an active warrant came to get food, and then the officers arrested them.
Instead of helping the unhoused community, city and state officials often criminalize survival itself. It makes being poor a crime. Like, imagine your entire job is to enforce displacement. But before the big gentrification push in the 2000s, Los Angeles went through another transformation: suburbanization. After World War II, middle class and especially white families fled downtown, taking their tax dollars and investments with them to build communities northeast of the San Fernando Valley, La Cañada, and Santa Clarita. These hyper-bougie neighborhoods were designed as bedroom communities, places to sleep, not places to live culturally. Entire towns built around cars, zoning laws and seas of asphalt parking lots. The car-centric layout of Santa Clarita, in particular, created a cultural desert with isolated strip malls, isolated chain stores, and freeways instead of neighborhoods, third places, or public gathering spots. Meanwhile, police from these suburban communities were deployed to manage the neighborhoods their families abandoned. Koreatown, Little Tokyo, South Central, El Sereno, El Monte, Baltimore the Hills. Basically places that are rich in culture and history. Burbank already lived through waves of change. It started off as a working-class farm town named after Dr. Luther Burbank. Yes, the dentist bro who also innovated in horticulture. But now, we're about to get deep into Burbank history. Because up until the city was formally established, it was a community of laborers, immigrants, and dreamers, including the Armenian diaspora. Basically, Armenians are an intrinsic aspect of Burbank's cultural identity. Burbank would not be what it is without them. Many of the Armenian families who live there today weren't originally fleeing to Burbank though. Many Armenians fled in the late 1800s and early 1900s as a result of the Hamadian and Adana massacres during the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Then came the Armenian genocide at the hands of the Young Turks of Turkey, which resulted in about 2/3 of the world's Armenian population being wiped out. To demonstrate the true gravity of this situation, Turkey itself is a member of NATO, which has given them political leverage to silence the leaders of the United States and other NATO members from acknowledging the Armenian genocide ever happening in the first place. Even former US President Barack Obama, who promised that he was going to acknowledge the Armenian genocide, never went as far as to acknowledge the Armenian genocide in the first place. It was genocidal war criminal Joe Biden himself who finally acknowledged the Armenian genocide. Just wow. But this genocide created a second wave of Armenians fleeing to various regions of the world, including Syria, Iran, Boston, New York, Fresno, and several pockets of Los Angeles County. By 1965, the Hart-Celler Act ended racist gatekeeping, allowing immigration from the Soviet Union and the Middle East to take place. This was when the next massive wave of Armenians refuged to the San Fernando Valley, many of whom were reuniting with long-lost family members who have been separated for generations due to those earlier displacements. A very famous example is Serj Tankian, the lead singer of System of a Down, whose family were descendants of Armenian genocide survivors and fled to Lebanon. During the Lebanese Civil War of the 1970s, his family fled to Hollywood, where he attended school and eventually met up with Darren Malakian, the future guitarist of System of a Down.
We're on drugs. We're on drugs, baby. We're on drugs.
This shows that Armenians are unbreakable in their cultural spirit, which is something that I've always deeply admired about them. As by the 1990s and 2000s, Armenian Americans had a massive impact on shaping Burbank's culture with various small family-owned businesses, cultural institutions, and building churches. Now, before the anti-Armenian racists like Kevin and Bean storm my comment section, let me clarify that Armenians themselves did not create the waves of gentrification through redevelopment, especially during their migration in the 1960s and 1970s. We can look no further than the Mall, which was a massive urban planning decision in 1967 that literally cut San Fernando Road in half, forcing drivers to loop around the mall to reconnect to the same street. If anything, Armenians themselves were victims of the exact kind of gentrification trends that were already plaguing Los Angeles to begin with. As mentioned earlier, many Armenian communities formed in pockets across Los Angeles County, such as Hollywood, East Hollywood, and the aptly named Little Armenia. However, Through the decades, Armenians have been priced out of these much older communities as a result of rising rent costs. Reporting from the Armenians Mirror Spectator documented that Glendale, a longtime center of the Armenian community, has experienced sharp rent increases, with working class families facing monthly rent hikes of hundreds of dollars, with no effective rent control to stop landlords from raising prices. Local tenant advocates in Glendale have argued that the absence of rent stabilization protection left many residents vulnerable and forced several families to relocate in search of affordable housing. Jeez, Armenians just can't seem to catch a break for some reason. But hey, at least the Americana shopping area has a literal ejaculating fountain, so we can forgive the landlords for pricing out the people who keep Glendale alive.
My mom told me that I was wrong. I knew that she was right.
Why does this keep happening? It's because the entertainment industry came knocking. Warner Brothers and Disney moved in, bringing with them cash, power, and the eventual upheaval. You see, in Burbank, Disney workers went on strike in 1941. Walt Disney himself, after going on a long anti-communist crash-out, fired union leader Art Babbitt. Then, in true Disney villain fashion, Walt Disney swerved his car dangerously close to Babbitt. No one got hit, but the message is clear. The working class of Burbank had better know their place. The mall is now an eyesore, especially after decades of decline and accelerated by the pandemic. It symbolizes that the profit incentive is the antithesis of culture. Backside Records was the beating heart of the community. However, it gives the context as to why the landscape wouldn't allow for Backside Records to continue and to flourish. And it's important to notice these trends in gentrification because it's a form of class warfare. If land developers and landlords squeeze from one side, cops squeeze from the other. DIY venues, backyard shows, and punk festivals have long been treated as sites to be shut down. In May of 2021, the Cypress Park Punk Show under the 110 freeway was broken up when LAPD fired rubber bullets into the crowd. You have to understand that if they're playing a punk show under a freeway bridge, that means they've been gentrified out of almost every venue that doesn't just play Eagles cover bands. You see, this isn't a one-off. You have to understand this. It is a decades-long pattern. Decades earlier, at the K-Rock Punk Festival at the Hollywood Palladium, featuring the Ramones and Black Flag, had LAPD officers entering swinging batons.
Get a big mass of people, and they all dance real close and run into each other and swinging their arms around and pounding off each other and bouncing off each other, and it's violent, but it's not malicious.
The media's played up the violence within the group or something, but that's really just wild fun. And the problem we've had is the police trying to stop our gigs and the police beating up people. We do hate the police, but it's the way they treat us. They try to control what we do.
So for the bootlickers who still listen to Rage Against the Machine unironically, what should have been a celebration of two of the most iconic bands became a violent confrontation. Fans weren't seen as music lovers, they were treated like criminals. And honestly, I'm barely scratching the surface for any meaningful critique of gentrification as a whole. So, in the description, I'm going to link you some additional videos to learn more about gentrification, including this one, produced by Jessica Lopez, that is massively underrated. You should go check it out. Here's a sample of what you can expect from that video.
The Dodgers Dream Field program puts baseball fields in lower income areas to give them access to a place to play. This, however, is ironic to me considering the origins of Dodger Stadium and the hundreds of people they displaced to build it.
Keep that in mind when you see things like One Piece being used as propaganda devices to promote the LA Dodgers. Absolute perversion. Resistance has always been a part of Los Angeles' cultural DNA.
We are tired, sick and tired of these attacks that are dividing and separating our families. And so that's why when we have these protests, they have been peaceful, but when the repression comes from the state, whether it's the sheriffs, the LAPD, or on Saturday, for example, in Paramount, California, it was the Border Patrol, it was brutal violence. They shot thousands of rounds of tear gas, of flashbang grenades, of all kinds of repressive instruments used against the community, but what they didn't think was going to happen was that the people would resist and would fight back.
Tenant unions fight the landlords who accelerate these rent hikes. Radical groups historically confronted gentrifiers directly. DIY organizers and anti-police activists carve out spaces where culture can survive. The stakes are bigger than a single record shop. You have to understand this. Stores like Backside mattered simply by existing, stubborn reminders that culture belongs to the people. Backside Records' story fits within this larger arc. Its transition from the music hub that we all know and love to the streetwear outlet, and eventually to closure. It reflected Los Angeles itself, a city where underground culture is constantly being squeezed out between capital and cops. Backside was a refuge, a contradiction, and tragically, in 2018, Backside Records completely shut its doors. Backside Records is a casualty of multiple waves of gentrification, not just in Burbank, California, but the entire Los Angeles metropolitan area. Its loss reminds us how fragile third places are, and how much effort it takes to keep them alive in a city that is built to erase them. Backside Records might be gone, but it lives on in all of us. The raging halls that once vibrated with some of the best shows I've ever been to still echo in memory. Even if many of us have been priced out of these neighborhoods that we grew up in, the soul of Backside can't be erased. It roared once in the heart of Burbank, California, and as long as we carry it in our hearts, that roar still echoes. Friends, I want to thank you for watching this video. Please go in the description below and click on the link that says bsidevinyl.com. This is the pop-up stand that Jojo and his friends have continued to live on through the legacy. It's not an established storefront, but they do sell vinyl and they do have pop-up stands. You can tell that Jojo still is in it for the music. Go in the description, check out the website, see if there's anything you like, and then order it out. Again, they are not sponsoring my video. It's just something that I found that I wanted to shout out to help them with their business. And if you like what I do, support me on Ko-Fi. I could use some money to eat.